as we explore quantum body and through the book, of course, but also in these discussions on these videos, I should state that the book itself is more practical. It's more about how you get in touch with your quantum body, and the supposition is that the quantum body is part of the quantum field and that it is subjective. So the book explores practical exercises. In these videos, we go a little bit deeper into the theoretical basis of what I'm saying. So let's go a little bit about this discussion, because the book itself assumes that your body is quantum and that the quantum field is imbued with subjectivity. This is not widely agreed by a lot of scientists. So is the quantum field imbued with subjectivity? And of course, proponents of that field, of that view, will say yes. And of course, many mainstream scientists will say no. Let's look at the possible arguments in both views. So those who argue that the quantum field is inherently non-local also believe that it is imbued with subjectivity, at least some of them. They argue that the field is not a passive objective reality, but rather an active participatory realm in which consciousness plays a role. They point to the fact that the act of observation can collapse the wave function of a quantum particle, seemingly forcing the particle to choose a definite state. I remember reading in Freeman Dyson's book, Infinity in All Directions, somewhere here on my bookshelf, and he said every quantum experiment forces the atom or the particle to make a choice. I did use that quote once in a debate with Richard Dawkins, and he actually screamed at me saying, Freeman Dyson should sue you. He never said that. Of course he did, and we contacted Freeman Dyson, and of course he pointed to the quote in the book. In any case, the proponents of the quantum field as subjective suggests that the observer is not a mere spectator of the quantum world, but somehow influencing this. Proponents of this view also argue that the quantum field is inherently non-local. I mentioned that before, meaning that particles can be entangled in such a way that they're instantly connected, even when they're separated by vast distances. This non-locality suggests that the field is not confined to the usual constraints of space and time, that it may be more closely related to the realm of consciousness, which is also non-local. And then there are arguments against this view, but I'm not going to go into them because I don't agree with them. But that's where we are right now. But then we'll go a little bit further in this debate, whether the quantum field is subjective or objective, because I think we have a solution. And the solution is that the quantum field is the basis of the experience of both the observer and the observed. In other words, the observer and the observed are complementary aspects of the quantum field. This means they are two sides of the same coin, and one cannot exist without the other. So, of course, classical physics, which has been very successful, the observer is considered to be separate from the observed system. The observer can make measurements of the system without affecting it. However, in quantum physics, the act of observation can affect the system in a very fundamental way. This is because quantum systems are described by wave functions, which are probabilities. When an observation is made, the wave function collapses into a single definite value. This collapse is a random event, and the observer has no control over the outcome. The observer-observed relationship is one of the most puzzling and important aspects of quantum mechanics. I have a solution, but let me finish the argument. So, in general, there is no consensus about whether the observer influences that which is observed. But in a previous post, I mentioned that the collapse of the wave function actually immediately creates observer and observed as complementary aspects of the same reality. So, is the observer a part of the quantum system? Well, most people will say no, but it is necessary to make observations of the system. The act of the observation can affect the system in a fundamental way. Anyway, this is where we are with current science. But let's take this a bit further. Is the quantum field sustaining our body, this body? Yes, because the quantum field is everywhere, including in your body. It is providing the energy that allows our cells to function, and it is holding our bodies together. Without the quantum field, our bodies would not exist. I think everybody would agree with that. So the quantum field is essential for our existence. Our bodies are complex systems that are constantly interacting with the quantum field. And this interaction is what it allows us to live. This is the basis of everything we talk about in this book. So now look at this from another point of view. That which we call an object, any object, is an experience. And the experience is basically some form of knowing. The form of knowing is either perceptual or cognitive or mathematical, but it is a form of knowing. And the form of knowing is in consciousness. Where else could it be? So when I look at something, doesn't matter what it is, this ring or this hand, question is who's looking? The eyes are not looking. The brain is not looking. Of course, consciousness is looking through the brain, which is conditioned, and we see through the instrument of the eyes a localized experience of the non-local. So what is looking? Consciousness is looking, and if you trace back the sensations, which include all sense perceptions, sensations, color, shape, form, texture, sound, taste, and smell, you trace them back, then you realize that those sensations are modified aspects of consciousness. Okay. There has to be a witnessing awareness for this to be experienced, or anything to be experienced. In that witnessing awareness, all possibilities exist before the act of observation. So, in a sense, what we consider objects are actually subjective experiences in non-local consciousness. And that which we call the subjective experience, the subject in classical thinking is this body-mind. So this body-mind and that which is observed are entangled. Subject and object are entangled as experience in non-local awareness. So is the world objective? Is the world subjective? We experience it as subjective, but then when we see things, say, out there, as a result of our conditioning out there, then we say that is the objective world. And of course, in order to say that, we have to first have some subjective experience. So, in the deeper reality, subject and object are the same field. Subject and object are the same field. In fact, you need both. You can't have an object of experience without a subject to experience it. And you can't have a subject of experience without an object to be experienced. So when we realize that, then we realize that reality is one, and subject object and the mode of knowing of the object is all entangled and correlated in the one consciousness, which is infinite and borderless and fundamental, and in a sense incomprehensible. We cannot experience it. We can experience it, but we can't actually observe it, because it is both the observer and the observed. So if this makes sense to you, then this book will make sense. If this doesn't make sense to you, then this book won't make sense. Okay, because the book is all about how you can influence the experience of your physical body by connecting to the causal or quantum body. Thanks for participating in these conversations. As I reflect and I share these reflections with you, and I get some of your feedback, I actually expand my awareness, and also there's this evolution in my understanding of what happens in awareness. Goodbye for now, and thank you.